What's going on, everybody? Jason with HOJ Forge. Today I am doing a wizard bottle opener. I've been focused on doing faces, human and animal, trying to get better and better, and I think it's working out. So let's get going with this
To make
project.
these wizard faces, you're going to need some specialized punches. Well, some normal punches. First, you're going to need just a cutting chisel. The one I use has a slightly rounded surface rather than flat, but a flat one should work okay for this if that's all you have. Other thing, an eyeball punch helps. You can use just like a hole punch, so you're going to need that really small hole punch. And if that's all you have and you don't have an eyeball punch and you don't feel like making one, you could get away with just punching some little holes for the eyeballs. But you're going to need that for the nostrils, the little one. Then for the mouth, I put it upside down like a frown in them, and so you're going to need a pretty aggressive curved chisel like that. It's one I use on the dogs when I make them, when I do the dog mouse. The other one that I use that's curved is for the hat band, and not quite as aggressive. So those are the two that might be a little not in everyone's toolbox. And to make these, all I do is I take a cutting chisel, make it flat instead of curved like that, and then just round it over. Takes a little finessing on the belt sander when I'm done, but they're really not that hard to make. So you're also going to need a big fuller, same one I use for doing the bottle openers. And then this, I've heard them called different things. I just call it my multi-purpose fullering tool. I've heard them called set tools. It's just flat. A lot of people make them square. I like having different radiuses. So it's when you're trying to get into a particular area, you know, if you're working on a particular area and you need an impression, a divot, or something, and you need a particular size. You know, I've got one that's a little more square than others. I've got one, I'm going to be using the rounded side on this, but there's no sharp edges on it. So the rounded side right up under the nose is what's going to set it off so that I can finish his nose and put his mustache in his mouth and stuff. So I think those are all the specialty chisels that I'm going to need for this, but yeah, I'm going to make a wizard.
Alrighty, I am starting out with 1/2 inch square, and the first thing I'm doing is focusing on the hat of the wizard. So I'm just putting a taper on the very end here, and then I'm going to taper down, I don't know, a couple inches, 2 or 3 inches. Do it in a couple of heats, just because I'm in no rush. I suppose if you could get it done in one heat, but doing a thinner hat up top, I mean, there's different styles you can do, but just a smooth, gentle taper is what I'm after. So that's his hat there, and then on the next heat here, I'm going to take the corners off. I suppose you could round it out. That just seems like it takes more time for me. I guess I did round the end a little bit, the very end, at the end of this heat maybe. But for the most part, I'm just trying to take the corners off so it's not sharp. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you could round it. Don't see why you couldn't. I just don't. So yeah, just kind of rounding the very end of it there. But other than that, pretty square with just the corners taken off. I forgot to mention when I was describing the tools, is a guillotine tool really helps with, those are half-inch dies. I think they're half-inch, yeah. So this is where I'm doing the nose. I'm going down maybe an inch from where I did the hat, where the hat ends, that taper ends. And I'm just going, I want to say 2/3 in. Not all the way in, you'll see it, but I want the back of the wizard's head to be the same thickness all the way around, so I'm not going all the way down, more like 2/3 in. And I did this one in 2 heats. I usually do it in 1, and his nose actually came out kind of thin at the end there, which I wasn't super happy with, but it's all right. I generally leave it with a little bit fatter nose than that. But next I'm taking that fuller, the big fuller, the one that I use for the little divots on the bottle openers, and I'm putting his eyes in. I guess they're you'd call them the eye sockets maybe, and I'm doing both of them at the same time, just kind of going back and forth because I'm trying to keep them centered. And as one gets, a little off center, I'll adjust the direction that I'm hitting that fuller, so that the center of them stays in the center. And then I'm just going down. I usually do this in 1 heat as well, but you could do it in 2 heats if you needed to. And I'm holding on to that stock with the blacksmith's third hand. Yes, I'm forging in shorts. And normally I forge in a kilt, but I just didn't put it on today, so I'm just in shorts. Not the smartest thing in the world. And then, yeah, you saw me straighten out the piece there. Keep it as straight as you can. So here's that fullering tool, or that set tool, I guess you'd call it, and I'm just going in at an angle right beneath his nose. It's a pretty aggressive angle too. All I'm doing is just trying to offset the bottom of the nose just a little bit. I don't want to flatten out the whole piece, just underneath the nose, so that on the next heat I can go in and put the nostrils in. So basically at this point I've got a nose and eye sockets, and now I'm putting the nostrils in the bottom of the nose with that small punch. And this one I do in 2 heats. I usually do it in 2 heats because right now I'm just trying to get them even, kind of where they're both in the same area. One's not higher up or further out or further in. It does happen though where they're not exactly perfect, and so again, adjusting the angle of that punch will, as I expand and make the holes bigger, will help get those holes in closer to the same area. Like there, I'm pushing it down because it was just a little too far towards the tip of the nose, and I needed it closer to his face to match the other one. So just kind of move that punch around, and what I'm doing is trying to get the nostrils to flare just a little bit. You could make them over exaggerated if you want a more cartoony face, or if you're going for something a little less cartoony, just make them smaller. You can just put a couple of old divots in there and call them nostrils and be good. I'm kind of going for that in between cartoony. I guess it's all cartoony. I don't know. This is where I noticed the nose was not quite perfectly centered. You can see it's off just a hair, and it's because I did it too thin, I think. So I'm just taking a fuller here and moving it over a little bit. I wasn't sure this was going to work. I'm glad it did, because by the time you get this far and the face is looking like a face, you don't want to say, screw it, his nose is crooked. But I got it pretty well straightened out there, pretty well centered. So now I am going and cutting in the mustache, and I'm starting right in the center of his nose and angling down. You'll see it here. I'm sort of just making an upside down V from my perspective, a sideways V, I guess, from your perspective. But that's going to be the mustache. And now I'm just taking the chisel and I'm just making that line really defined. I'm going to make it even more defined here in just a minute, but for this heat, I'm just trying to get it pretty deep and well defined, and then as the heat starts tapering, I'm just going to go in and give the mustache a little more characteristic. Sometimes I only do like 2 lines on each side. Sometimes I do just a whole bunch of little hairs. This one's sort of a combination of just some long lines, and then I go with some smaller lines that just play around with it. I've only done this wizard, I don't know, half a dozen times at this point. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm just playing around still and trying to find things that I like and things that I don't. And that's the nice thing that I found with this particular guy, is he's comes out well enough now, even before I say I'm an expert at him, that I can play around with him a little bit and try some different things. So here I am, I'm just defining that mustache even more. And what I'm doing is trying to get it, that chisel down in there. And you see the angle I'm holding it at, especially on this side, you can see it, as I'm trying to push that mustache out and up, just to get it to look more like a mustache, just to be separated from the rest of it. And actually the bottom of the mustache does tend to become separated from the rest of the face. I think you can see it here. You can see it sticking out there just a little bit at the bottom of the mustache. Those are actually quite sharp, and so on this heat, I'm straightening them out and just tapping those sharp corners back down into the side, just kind of curving them back around, because it's a bottle opener. I don't want anybody grabbing it and hurting their hand. So now I'm going with that really aggressive round chisel and my cutting chisel again. And I forgot to run the camera while I was cutting the mouth, but that's how I did it. Was using the aggressive round chisel and just putting it in there. It took, I don't know, 3 or 4 blows before I had it good. And now I'm just going in and putting his beard in. And the beard, much like the mustache, I just played around with it until I found something that I liked, and it was mainly just kind of not keeping the chisel on the same angle, but trying to get some stylistic hairs that were just a little off here and there. I don't know, it just gave it a little more characteristic. So everything's going kind of in one direction, but then there's just a couple of hairs that are just a little off, and it just kind of gives it a more, I mean, he doesn't look real, but I guess it gives it a more realistic appearance, maybe. But here we go. So mustache, mouth, beard, nose, done. And now it's time to focus on the eyes. And that's the eye punch here. Now when I do the eyes, the one thing that I've noticed you really have to be good at, it doesn't matter where you put the eyes in here, it'll just give them a different expression, but you have to get them to match. So here I went kind of close together and kind of down close to his nose. I didn't know what that was going to give me as an expression wise. It sort of makes him look surprised to me, like, what?
Here's one other tool that I'll use sometimes for the eyebrows, and that's just a fuller that's quite a bit more aggressive than this fuller that I use a lot for like leaves and things like that. This one's quite a bit, it's not a cutter, it's not a chisel, but it is quite aggressive. And so when I come in for the eyebrows, I'll come in and cut the V with the chisel, but then sometimes I'll take this really aggressive fuller and fuller them down towards the face to give him the angle that I want, so that he looks a little more, I don't know, mean and aggressive rather than surprised.
So here I'm putting the eyebrows in, just right above the eyes, and I'm just cutting a V, a really wide V, but it's basically just a V. And once I have that V in, I'm just putting a little texture in the eyebrows themselves just to kind of mimic hairs a little bit. And now I'm going to take that really aggressive fuller and just try to get those eyebrows down. I want him to compress the eyes a little bit so he looks a little more mean than he does surprised, I guess, because that's kind of how he's coming out to me, is surprised. But I think in the end here I get it. Took a couple of heats. But he's already looking less surprised. But I did one more heat here with that fuller, just to get those eyebrows down more, just to make him look like he's scowling. And yeah, so I noticed here the edge of the eyebrows were a little sharp too, so I'm just tapping those down. Again, because it's battle opener, I don't want anyone getting hurt. Now it's time to focus on the hat, the ring around the hat and the star. And I'm using that curved chisel and the cutting tool to do it. And this is where I got off sequence with the camera. So I used the curved chisel and put 2 lines in for the hat band. And then I used the cutting chisel to do 1, 2, 3, 4 lines to make the star. And I got off sequence with the camera thinking I was turning it on when I was really turning it off and stuff like that. So now I got the hat band done and the star on. So now I'm just giving the hat just a little curve, a little character, so it's not just straight. Which, I mean, you could leave it straight, I guess, if you wanted it. But I like curves. If you ever watch my videos, I'm always talking about the human eye being drawn to gentle curves when I'm making knives. And I like curves. So putting just a couple of curves in the hat to give them a little character. But that's it. And the wizard guy is pretty much done. Making sure he's flat there. And then I'm going to give him a heat and brush him off. And I'm actually going to take him to the wire wheel on the angle grinder at the end, but this is just going to kind of give me a pretty good representation of what he's going to look like when it's all said and done. And pretty happy with him. He came out pretty good. So now I'm going to turn the rest of him into a bottle opener. So I just cut him off, and now I'm flattening the end there. This isn't going to be a real big detailed bottle opener video because there's 8 million bottle opener videos out there. But after I got it flattened out, then I punched a hole. The exciting life of bottle openers, and the tongs got caught on something. We won't say what. So hole is punched, and now we're going to drift it out just a little bit, so we'll fit over the horn of the anvil there, and then start hitting the high spots. That was the key. When I started making bottle openers, I used to hate doing these kind with the round part with the little nib on it to catch the bottle cap. I don't know, it just seemed like it took forever for me. And then something clicked in my head where I was like, oh yeah, just hit the high spots. That makes a whole lot more sense than trying to figure out what the heck you're doing. You hit the high spots, and the thing stays even, it stays round, and once it's all done, then it's pretty easy to just go in there and round it all off because everything's pretty even. So now with that part done, go put that little nib in there that catches the the bottle cap. Usually you start with like that fuller half on, half off. I started a little too far back, so it actually took me a couple of heats. You can usually get it done in one heat if you're good and fast, but because I started so far back, I had to move a lot of material, so took a couple of heats, and then I finally got it sticking out there far enough. Because if that part doesn't stick out far enough, you're not catching the bottle cap. Just isn't happening. Then after this heat, this is where you shape the bottle opener part and kind of give the bottle opener that oval look. And again, I got off sequence with the camera, so I just shaped it. I just compressed that circle a little bit, and now I'm putting the touch mark in, which is something I always forget. I don't always, it's one of those things I forget as much as I remember. How about that? So yeah, now we're all done. Cooled it off in some water, and just took it to the wire wheel on the angle grinder. You can do the hot oil finish. Sometimes I'll bake that oil on there and make them black. I've been playing around with the finish on this guy, and I found that if I wire wheel the whole thing, get all that forge scale off, it really brings out the shininess of the steel in the highs. So the highs on his beard and his eyes and his nose are all nice and shiny, but the wire wheel doesn't get down into the lower parts, and so they stay dark. So there's a lot of contrast. And then if I go spray it with some poly, and I've been using this stuff, matte clear Varathane, Minwax satin finish works really well too, but this is what I've been using recently, and it doesn't take much, especially with this triple thick stuff. You got to be real careful not to overdo it, but spray it and it protects the metal, and you wind up with that guy, which I'm really super stoked about. It's one of the things I really never thought I'd be doing faces when I started blacksmithing, because I didn't think I was that good. But it's taken a few years and it's taken some practice, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.